And there we go. Welcome in. GC Live. Wes Mitchell here. Chris Clark, South Carolina, mostly South Carolina football edition here on your Wednesday afternoon. Hope everybody is doing well. First of all, as always, let us tell you about our guy, Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Again, ClintHammond.com if you want more information. If something we say piques your interest, just go to ClintHammond.com and get more information about his background. But what that website won't tell you, what I will tell you is that Clint, awesome to deal with. He's been in the mortgage game for about as long as Chris and I have been in the Gamecock football game, probably about the same time, actually. So has experience, has been through the ups, the downs, and everything in between of the whole just mortgage industry. So if you want to buy a home right now, call Clint. If you're kind of ramping up to that and want to be able to buy a home in a year, 3 years, 5 years, whatever your plan is, Clint can help you sort of take your big picture plan and then let's put it to action and let you know exactly what you do. That's what he did for me. That's what he can do for you too at 803-422-6797. And as always, a big Gamecock fan, a big Gamecock Central fan too. So shout out to our guy, Clint.
And we're also going to tell you about our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet, just like Clint with the mortgage game, vehicles. If you're looking for a new or used vehicle, if you're just kind of thinking about it, kind of like, frankly, Wes, like me, kind of thinking about looking down the road, what are some options? What should I be looking at? What's my roadmap look like for a new or used vehicle? Check them out, ferrychevrolet.com. All we ask, give them an opportunity to earn your business. They've been around since 1926. Conveniently located in Orangeburg, but you can also check out their website, ferrychevrolet.com, Fairey, Chevrolet.com, or 803-937-4531. Joseph Ferry, fourth generation dealer, still running the show over there. They've been an awesome partner for us here on GC Live and Gamecock Central. Go check them out. That's ferrychevrolet.com.
Yeah, shout out to both of those awesome sponsors. And what's up, Garnet Yardbird? Hope you're doing well. If you're in the chat, hope you're doing well out there today too, man. All right, let's get into football. Observations today, frankly, just not many. But I'm going to try to maybe take what we saw today, add it in with some things we've heard, add that in with some things the coaches have said, and then let's just whip it up a little bit and try to give the people something. Because, I would say one of the storylines, I just wrote about this a little bit, one of the storylines of spring ball so far has been kind of this little shift in how they are actually structuring spring practice. And so not only are you typically not doing a ton of stuff that the media can take and run with during the first 15, 20 minutes of practice, even with the normal old practice structure, when it's a Wednesday, that means there's even less, because the way they've done it is basically Chris, this is my understanding anyway. It used to be a practice ramped up as the practice went along. And so sometimes they would do like those fastball sessions, they call it, where you go out and get in a little bit of 11 on 11. A lot of times when we would be out there, they would be doing special teams in terms of the first couple of segments of practice. Well, you build up, you do some different drills. Some of it is positional drills. Some of it may be special teams. Some of it may just be fundamentals and stuff like that. But then eventually, hey, 7-on-7, offense versus defense. And then eventually the latter part of practice, full team 11-on-11. Well, Chris, Beamer alluded to this, I would say, when he told us, hey, we're trying to do some things to make sure guys understand the fundamentals of football better. But I feel like he was holding this in his back pocket a little bit in terms of giving it away at the time. Now we're kind of seeing it play out where it seems to me like, so they do Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday right now on the schedule. It's a build up across the different practices. And so on Wednesday, day one of the week, actually, in terms of on-field work during the spring, you are not even going offense versus defense. You are foundationally building all the things that you're going to be working on in Thursday's practice, which is a little bit of a build up from Wednesday's practice. And then you have a day to recover, day to go over the film, day to do everything you need to do on Friday. And then Saturday, not a traditional scrimmage, but a lot more 11-on-11 true football, build off of what you taught and what you worked on Wednesday and Thursday. So it used to kind of be the days are the same, you know what I'm saying, in terms of the number of days you're on the field, but it used to be practice, day off to reset, practice, day off to reset. And then within those practices, you were ramping up. Now it's more you're ramping up across those 3 days that you're going to practice in a given week.
Yeah, it is interesting. And, you get out there today, Wes, on which all the practices, right, that we've been able to see this spring have all been on Wednesday. On Wednesday, I believe. I think there's like a random, maybe our last one's on a Tuesday or something, or a Thursday.
By
They've all been
design.
on Wednesday.
By design.
By design. I was not going to say it, but you're probably right. But you go out there and the guys are in helmets, shoulder pads, and shorts. And I kind of like how it was described to us today walking around. It's a learning day, right? So we're not that we're expecting to go out and period one after stretch and warm up is they're out there doing 11-on-11 right to open practice. I didn't figure they would do that anyway. But even today in the parts where we saw, not at quite as much going on in terms of that type of activity on a Wednesday. So today it was a lot of, we're not seeing anything. Oh, I haven't seen that drill before. It's a lot of stuff that we've seen. I think it's continuing to get more and more eyes on the team. Like the time that we have been able to put eyes on this team this spring has still been limited. We've seen this team for, I don't know, an hour and a half, probably total. And with so many new players and so many returning players, a lot of it is just, let's just put eyes on this freshman. Let's just put eyes on this group of transfers. Let's try to see how Randy Clements and Deion Barnes, and Kendall Briles, like how are they integrating Stan Drayton? How are they integrating into the staff? What's their style? I mean, Wes, we're sitting there today. You're doing some special teams work. And I tapped you and said, man, look at Isaiah, number 4 at running back. He looks to me bigger than he was last year. And he's always been a guy that's like 6'1", but he just looked more filled out, looked even more the part than he was last season. So just, I think, little nuggets that you're picking up along the way. And just like you said, trying to combine that with what are the storylines? What are the coaches saying? And also, what are we hearing behind the scenes to kind of try to meld all of those things together. But it is still, even with the limited time that we've had to like eyeball this team, and we still have so many questions, so many storylines we're trying to get answered. I am intrigued because of some of those other changes they made, right? Like the big one is obviously new coaches, new offense. But even some of those structural changes that Shane Beamer's made with how they're practicing, how they introduce things earlier in January, getting back even more to fundamentals, those things I think are really, to me, almost just as interesting.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And so we did get to hear from several assistants this week. We got to hear from Shane Beamer this week. And even the install of the offensive playbook at least feels, and again, we're not in there for Satterfield's installation or Dow Loggins' installation, but it just feels a little bit different. I mean, it was mentioned, I guess, yesterday by Beamer. Hey, we really haven't installed third downs yet. It's been more first down, second downs. And it caught my attention, Chris, that it was mentioned, I guess this was Beamer. This is a completely different offense. And, a lot of times, and I believe this has even been said about this offense to an extent, a lot of times you do hear coaches kind of say, it's not that different. Or you hear coaches say, maybe guys are running a lot of the same plays anyway. Like, and that is true to an extent. Like a lot of schools, if you're a spread school, spread offense, man, there's gonna be carryover. There just is. But the more you hear, the more it seems like this is truly an entirely different offensive scheme, That means there is a learning aspect to that, as a learning aspect for the quarterbacks, learning aspect for everybody on that side of the ball. And you got all these new offensive linemen too, man. Everybody's having to learn at the same time. So I think there were some little just kind of tiny tidbits from listening to the coaches speak, listening to Beamer speak earlier this week that maybe catch your attention. And that was one of them for me, man. Just that, this is entirely different. And you hear Bryles talk, I guess that was last week, and he said, paraphrasing here, we didn't really look at the offense from last year at all. Like we're just not focused on that. So I don't know. Like sometimes there's a reset, and the coaches kind of try to do everything they can to keep in as much of the old stuff. And even Chris, remember Satterfield to Loggins, and then Loggins to Shula. And when we sat down with Beamer last offseason, it was, hey, Shula is trying to streamline a lot of the same scheme that Loggins was running. And there was this talk about how it was kind of three schemes that had been stacked on top of each other that kind of became their own separate thing, but really was a combination of everything in those three schemes. I mean, am I misreading this, dude? It sounds like it is a completely just throw all that aside, unplug the PlayStation, like hit the reset button, whatever, and we're starting over on offense.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's when Sat came in, it was, what is the offense going to look like? And I think we brought up this point the other day. It was either here on the radio, it's like we're trying to figure that out, and you joked, half joked, and we're still trying to figure it out in some ways, right? Because it is so many different things, and there was so much talk about identity. Well, in the transition from Sat to Loggins, it's, hey, we'll keep some of the pieces that we felt like worked. We'll introduce some new things, and same thing from Loggins to Shula. So you had this kind of amalgamation of these different offenses. Yeah. All put together. Now it's just like, it's that reset, it's, we still, Wes, have questions of what type of Kendall Bryles offense do we get, because he has that flexibility within the scheme, but he also has a system. You don't have to wonder like what is in the system. It's just kind of leaning into certain pieces of it based on the skill set of your quarterback and the skill set of your team, instead of just, here's our offense, right? I mean, yes, all coaches are going to say that they, cater their scheme to their players and what they call, but Kendall Bryles really has lived out like the idea and the phrasing that so many coaches say of, thinking in terms of players, not plays. And I think he does that, right? And that's kind of a collegey, right, type mindset. And it is a lot different from what South Carolina has done. And I think when Shane Beamer looked around and looked at the trends, even when South Carolina, people forget, it's gone a little bit under the radar how good they were offensively at the end of 2024. And I don't, the reasons don't matter. Yeah, Lenore Sellers went off. Great. All offenses have really good players, and most of them have really good quarterbacks. All of them. You had Rocket Sanders, you had Lenoris. You were one of the best teams in the SEC at scoring in the second half of that season. You were a top 25 rushing team. But even in that stretch, you still gave up too many sacks. You still had too many negative plays, and that has been a trend, right? So what did Beamer do? He unplugged that kind of era of offense and said, we're bringing in a fresh start, a new scheme, a true system, and we're also going to have that OC bring in his O-line coach who also knows that offense like the back of his hand and has worked for years, literally, directly with and alongside Kendall Bryles. So it's quite different. We'll have to see what the results yield, but it's certainly a different approach from what they've done in the past.
Yeah, and let me also say, man, there may be a few people with what I said a second ago saying, of course, it's a completely new offense. Like, are you an idiot? Like, that's what South Carolina signed up for. But that's not always the case when you change OCs. Sometimes it is let's try to make this as easy on the players as possible. Let's keep terminology the same. Let's do all these things that we did last year, but make certain changes to the approach. And then there is the just hard reset. We're doing something like this is all Kendall's deal, and let him go do what he wants to do. And that seems to be the direction this thing has headed for South Carolina. I do think it is interesting. You start to hear, Chris, little things here and there about the personalities of these new coaches, the way that they interact with the guys, the way that they coach. And I think a dynamic that hasn't been talked about much that is worth mentioning is the Coach Clem dynamic with Coach Jason Smith, or Coach Smooth, as they call him. And kind of, I don't think it's good cop, bad cop, but it's definitely a little bit of a, this is your old school, and Clem, your old school, technique driven, a little bit more understated, actually, kind of like, hey guys, this is how we're going to do it. I need you to do it like this. And if you're going to do it until you get it right. And then Smooth is more of your loud, rambunctious, high energy, talking trash. Like it may be early in the morning in the weight room, but you better be awake. You better be like, you better be glad to be here type guy. Brings the energy, rubs that off on everybody else type guy. And so I think it is kind of fascinating to start to get the little details on the various coaches. Deion Barnes, we've heard, has been fantastic with getting recruits on campus for visits. We've seen that with the number of top edge guys that they've been able to get on campus. Kind of picked up right where Sterling left off, to be honest. On the field, he's been very good, but he's a little bit more of a, I would say, this is how down to business type coach. Like this is how we're going to do it. This is how I expect you to do it. You don't always see that with the young guys, man. He's a younger coach, but maybe some similarities there to Trayvon Robertson and how they kind of operate in terms of just there's a little bit of an old school mindset despite these being two younger coaches at those two positions. So those things have kind of stood out to me a little bit just watching the guys work and what you hear about the guys working this spring.
Yeah, and Kendall, I think you nailed those two. To talk about the other two, Kendall, I've heard from several people that been at practice, have watched people inside the program, and they really like him, just as a person, and have talked about the energy that he's brought. And that's important. If you're one of those people that says, I really don't care, show me results, right? We're going to have to wait a little while on results until the season gets here. But a lot of those people have pointed out, like, hey, in practice, seen some good things. I've heard some good things in terms of what they've done with the running game, right? Will it translate? Again, we're going to have to see. First couple games, Mississippi State, the SEC opener, like we're going to get some better ideas then. But he's got, I think, even a different approach than we've seen from some past South Carolina OCs, just in terms of he's got kind of a youthful energy, exuberance on the field that I think has been good for the players as they transition to this new offense. And the other one, Wes, of course, is Stan Drayton, and talked to some people about him, talked to Shane Beamer about him when we had him last week on Pro Day. We had him on the radio show on 107.5 The Game. Asked him about Stan Drayton because if you remember, Beamer made a change at the running backs coach position, and Drayton was the guy he wanted. He said, this is the guy I'm going to go get. He worked with him at Mississippi State about 20 years ago. They've kept in touch. Drayton's been to a lot of, Florida, Ohio State, Texas, been in the NFL, been a head coach. He's coached some big time backs, and that's the guy Beamer wanted. And the thing that stood out about that is he's just, no nonsense. Beamer said that he called in the running backs and not called him in, but he's talked to all the running backs, said, hey, what do you think of Coach Drayton? And to a man, he's no nonsense, and he's exactly what we needed. And so it seems like the approach there is even a little bit different in that room. Obviously that's a fascinating room because you have a new coach. You have 3 running backs from last year's roster who are back west, who are kind of probably, I think, setting the pace in spring practice. And then you got 3 transfers coming in as well. So a lot of competition in that room. And that's certainly an area where they have to get better at the running back position and in the run game.
And I think have to get better recruiting at that position as well when you start looking at high school recruiting to be specific. And I think there's still an element, man, of recruiting matters in the high school ranks. And a lot of the transfer portal stuff, yeah, recruiting matters, like ability to recruit matters, but a lot of it is what is the fit, what's the salary essentially, and maybe have I met this coach before? Do I like this coach? The long term, like relationship building. Oh, I want to play for that coach, even with all the NIL and rev share and all the money. It does still matter to an extent, and I think you see that show in your high school recruiting is kind of how you judge that, and that's an area where South Carolina, just basically part of the reason they had to make a change at that position, in my opinion, was because of the lack of high school recruiting at that spot. So I think Drayton already some pretty strong signs that he's going to break through for the Gamecocks in that area moving forward. And, that position, it's very interesting for this season because I still don't think there's like that Rocket Sanders, just obvious, like, hey, this guy's going to start. If you told me, like, I feel like you could probably make a pretty strong case, man, for like almost everybody in that room. There's a couple of guys I would be, I'm not going to single anybody out to the negative. There's maybe a guy or two that if you told me, oh, that guy's going to start game 1, I'd be like, that surprises me a little bit. But there's maybe 3 or 4 in that room that if you told me they're running out there game 1, on the field, getting the first carry of the season, I wouldn't really be that shocked. And really, it kind of runs the gamut of being some of the returning guys and a couple of the newcomers that have transferred in. Like, I think all those guys have some ability to them, man. It's just going to be really about which ones actually improve, which ones perform, which ones fit the offense. And like, I think some positions in today's world, man, it's more just you're slotting. All right, we brought this guy in for this amount of money. We've seen what he can do. Yeah, they have to earn it, but everybody kind of knows how it's going to probably play out. At running back, I think this is like a true old school on the field competition.
Yep. Yep. And I think that's amplified by the fact that you now have a new person leading that room. So you're getting a blank slate. Now Stan Drayton is familiar with some of these players. He coached Jabri Coleman at Penn State last year during his redshirt year. I don't know if he had some carryover like during the recruiting process with Sam Williams-Dixon, but from Ohio State, but he did have the like some family, like some connections there to where I think he kind of knew of him. But you're getting blank slate in terms of your coach. You're getting blank slate, clean slate in terms of your offensive coordinator. And so I do think there's a lot of competition there. Now, is it fair to say that the 3 returners maybe have a leg up because they've been here, they've all played some football, they've all played some football at South Carolina? That might be fair, right? I'll tell you the guy that I don't think is getting talked about enough, and that is Isaiah Augustave, right? Number 4 for Carolina. I heard some good things over the weekend about him. And that might be, hey, maybe that turns out to be kind of a one-off, like a good weekend, but it might not. And I think, he originally out of high school went to Arkansas. His first year was 2023. Kendall Briles last year at Arkansas was 22, but they did know each other from recruiting. So Kendall Briles is familiar with Isaiah's game. He's played some in college. He was a former 4-star guy. He certainly looks the part. And Wes, remember when we were talking to Shane Beamer earlier this year for our sit down with him, he brought up Isaiah and said, hey, he's a guy that we thought could play last year, but he arrived late. Remember, he was a later portal get. He arrived in the summer. They felt like they needed to just redshirt him, let him get integrated with the program. And it seems like he could be poised to take that next step. So I just think a lot of people are thinking in terms of Fuller, who, yeah, maybe he's the clubhouse leader. He's shown some things. Howell, who's shown some things. And the focus on these transfers. But I feel like Isaiah is getting a little bit lost in that shuffle. Probably need to include him in there as well.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that's a spot that I think we're not going to really know till the scrimmages hit, and even then, we saw it last year. Like depth can be good and bad, man. Like I think you do hope as the year goes on that you're not kind of in a spot like last year where you think you kind of know who your top two guys are going to be, and then as the year goes on, it shifted actually multiple times in terms of going into a given game who was going to be your kind of main two guys. And so I think that's maybe one thing on offense that you hope will be improved from last year is just knowing who your best two running backs are, and then them being able to go out there and play the game and get into a rhythm and all those things that you want to see from running backs. Let's go through a couple of the things that the assistants said earlier this week. So you had multiple assistants speak on Monday. You're going to have, I guess, several more assistants speak the beginning of next week, Chris. Sean Elliott talked quite a bit about the return to the tight ends, doing tight ends, then O-line, then tight ends, kind of being back with his room. I did think it was interesting, something you and I had heard and we put out there earlier, kind of leading up to the spring, but that Sean kind of, I would say, confirmed would be that there are, I would say, some emerging expectations for Mike Tyler in that tight end room. Working with the second group right now, but was called a really skilled athlete by Sean Elliott. Great mindset. Said he can catch the ball and run, plays a good hand placement, good route runner. And he said, I see Mike taking a huge step this season and being a formidable force for us on offense. And it is kind of funny when you see Mike out there wearing that number 20 jersey. You do, my brain still sometimes thinks Mike Smith when I see it. And you've had guys move, and so Mike was 20. Then wasn't Mike
4?
Augustave was 23.
3. I think 23 is right.
Is that right?
I think that's right.
He's wearing 4 now.
He's 4. Yep.
When you pointed him out today and I saw that 4 in my head, I was like, no, 4 is a tight end. You know what I'm saying? Because he physically looks like a tight end, does Augustave, wearing that 4. Yep. But Mike Tyler actually has a little bit of Mike Smith qualities to him, maybe. And I think that would be maybe somebody in the category. I think I'm going to write about this, man. We've talked, everybody's talked, all the newcomers, right? Everybody's talked about all the guys that are coming back. Lenora Sellers, Nick Harbor, Dylan Stewart, on and on and on and on. J.O., J.R., Vicari. What about South Carolina's sophomore class? The guys who have been in this program going on their second year out of the high school ranks, whether they redshirted last year or whether they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
The upside of this team may actually come down to how many of those guys fill in the gaps. A DeMarcus Leach at cornerback. I think it's probably going to be your third corner this year if you had to predict it right now. That's going to mean he's going to play a lot and he's going to need to play well. Mm-hmm. Mike Tyler, not going to be the first guy out there at tight end, but when you look at the guys they've lost from that room, he's going to have to play. He's going to have to play well.
Yep.
We have talked a ton about the wide receivers, Donovan Murph, Lex Cyrus, Malik Clark, all those second-year guys. Like there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of unknown in terms of what is the role of all these second-year guys. But Mike Tyler, one, probably just not getting talked about as much as he should. But I think there there's a bunch of guys in that class that you almost, for Carolina to have a really good year, we need to continue to be having conversations about them. Like, they need to be giving us reasons to have those conversations about them, I think.
Yeah, and if you didn't hit on Leach, I was going to. That's another one that, and we've written about this and said it, like he's probably not getting enough attention either based on the coaching staff's opinion of him. Garnet Yardbird, great point. Shed Surratt, Jaden Sellers, Kendall Daniels, at safety. Can he make a bit of a push there? Those are all really good points and good ones to bring up. Mike Tyler's emergence, I think, is critical for tight end depth. He's going to play some. Like you said, when he plays, he needs to play well. Special teams, right? He's got the body type and skill set to contribute there for Shane Beamer and Matthew Smiley, the new special teams coach. Look at who they lost, Wes, and who they brought back. They've got Brady Hunt, who's in his 15th season of college football or so. You've got Maurice Brown, Mo Brown, who's been here, came here as a walk-on, has done some really good things for you. I mean, just embodies what you want in a player because he's physical. Elliott had some great things to say about him, like bar fight type of guy. Mo Brown ran the first play of the season for him last year against Virginia Tech, if you remember that. So Brady Hunt and Mo Brown, they're going to be out there, I think, early and often. But to your point, can Mike Tyler come in and play well for you when he's called upon, or can he push to where it's like, man, we got to get this guy on the field a little bit more? I think that would be a positive development because, yes, for this season, but you also look towards his development in the short term and in the long term. I think, Wes, one reason why South Carolina didn't go out and maybe grab a couple tight ends in the portal, they did take Max Drag from UCF. We'll see how he factors in this season. But they had those two guys I just mentioned come back, and you've got Mike Tyler out there as a guy who's in year 2, who you feel like can be able to give you something this year and then into the future as well. So that's a great point. You should write about that. I think you should write about the sophomore class a little bit because that is going to be an important part.
Yeah, I have a headline in our admin. I just haven't actually written the article, so we'll see when I get to that. But I think there's something there. I think there's something to that. What did you think of? And we'll move on to another position here in a second. What did you think of Sean Elliott's comment about one kind of doubling down on something we just talked about, the differences in this offense? And Sean's quote was, I mean, I'm not going to touch on specifics, but there's been some radical changes. There's only so much you can do with the tight end, of course. And I think we've all seen it. We all watch football. But there are things, just like I said, these tight ends are now the, quote, adjusters of the offense. They get to kind of put themselves in a position to make fantastic things work, which I think is fantastic, that opportunity. It gives those guys the freedom to play loose and out of control while being in control. Have you ever heard of tight ends being called the adjusters? And Sean talked about that in a different question. He said, they make us right. The tight ends are going to make us right. They have a job to do to put themselves in specific positions to make the offense go and to make it work and to have us the ability to play with confidence and fast-paced. Confidence and fast-paced, I think, is what it probably should have said. But
yeah, that is a great term, adjusters, and you kind of dive into what does that mean, and I think just looking at what he said and looking back at Kendall Browell's offenses again, like Kendall Browell's offense has taken different shapes. You've got some where it's Josh Hoover at TCU throwing for a whole bunch of yards. You've got others like 2022 Arkansas, which I think, Wes, Shane Beamer would love to be an offense like that. What was the stat? They rushed and threw for 250 a game or something crazy like that. Like, you would absolutely love that, particularly with the personnel that you have. Where it actually lands, we don't know. I take that doesn't necessarily mean the tight ends are out here and a tight end is your leading receiver at the end of the year, or you got a couple tight ends catching 40 balls. but they do have a critical role in the offense in the run game, setting formations, blocking, moving around, being a pass catching option. But my antenna is up now to like pay more attention and maybe learn more about what exactly does that mean? What does it mean for the team this season as far as how the tight ends are utilized? Definitely interesting stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. What's up to Matthew Sellers? Hope you're well, man. Anybody else in the chat? Let us know you're there. Say what's up. Very quiet. I guess because we just don't do the show as much anymore, Chris. Our chatters have gotten out of the habit of hopping on while we're live and chatting with us, but would love to hear from all of you. What's up, Lynn Turner? Hope you're well too. They said they're here. Let's go through a couple more coaches, man. Deion Barnes, I would say his press conferences match what you hear about him as a coach in terms of kind of a little bit matter of fact, not going to sort of give you a ton of flashy things. It's a little bit more by the book. And I did think he gave us a couple little details, though. And one thing that stood out to me was Caleb Herring and what he said about him. Good run defender, long. He makes plays when he's using his power, and also he's a great kid. Really listens and takes good notes. And then he's been helping the young guys out. So just the veteran presence is something that he's helping us out a lot this spring. Going back to when I talked to Caleb Herring and interviewed him when he first got here, one of the things he was trying to focus on that I really appreciated was just the self-reflection of saying, hey, I didn't always come to work every day with the right mindset early in my career, and I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to get better every single day. So when Caleb Herring says that, and then his coach talks about him helping other guys, talks about the veteran mindset, talks about doing things the right way, and even the run defending part, man, I kind of had Caleb Herring in my mind, maybe a little bit more pass rush specialist. That's maybe where he's going to eat. That's where he's going to live. And so I thought Deion Barnes signaling out the run game aspect is a pretty good sign for Caleb Herring, considering the hope and the belief is that you are bringing him in to start opposite of Dylan Stewart in this defense.
You know what you hope it is, Wes, is remember, I was just telling somebody this yesterday, going into the 2024 season. I was talking to somebody who went to a preseason practice before the 2024 season. And remember, this is off a 5-7 year in 23. People are kind of wait and see. We'll see what happens. And they brought in that transfer class that included Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight. And I remember somebody went to a practice and told me, man, Demetrius Knight looks really good. And so does the rest of this team. They're like, I think we're going to be really good. And you go, okay. Well, remember, man, Kyle Kennard, right? Like, he was a nice portal get at the time. They beat Missouri, Florida State. Like, you're like, this is a good get. He had some pass rush juice, had 7 sacks at Georgia Tech the last year, had 4 sacks in a game against Wake. But the thing we kept hearing about Kyle was, hey, he can really set the edge. Not this cat's going to win the Nagurski, probably, or he's an elite pass rusher. And he ended up being really, really good at all those things. He and Dylan Stewart, the defensive tackles, like all those guys helped each other. Without those D tackles, without Stewart, maybe Kennard doesn't have quite the year that he did, but he had a great one. I think, you think about Caleb Herring, I kind of thought of it in reverse. Like when I looked at him this offseason, I go, this guy has some serious potential as a pass rusher, but you're starting to hear more about the run game aspect. Well, maybe it turns out to where he ends up being pretty adept at both those things. And frankly, that's what you're going to need because, this spring you're light in terms of bodies. Great time for him to develop, great time for Julian Walker to develop. And I think it was a positive that Barnes, coaches are going to say good things in press conferences, right? But they don't have to go that far. And I think the fact that he's been studious and exactly what you wanted and hoped for so far matched with kind of what he's telling you, like at Tennessee, it wasn't always work. And he has kind of flipped that switch now to where I think you probably feel better about his opportunities to reach his potential. Former number one prospect in the state of Tennessee, coming out of high school in the 2023 class. Still a guy I think has a lot of potential and has shown some of that, flashes of it, in the SEC.
Yeah, for sure. We got a couple more folks weighing in. What's up, Nick? Jeffrey says you got to love Mo Brown. When he plays, he gives it 100% every play. Absolutely. Jeff also says how many practices are left. So they would have been on practice 7 today. So you got 8 left. No spring game this year. Matt also says who wants to see Sean, Clem, and Mo in a bar fight. Chris, was this – you guys started this bar fight conversation on the radio. Is that right?
Yeah, started on the radio because
was that based
Elliott
on a
got asked
comment
about
from Sean Elliott?
From Sean, yep.
Who did he want in his bar fight? Max Drag?
He mentioned Mo Brown, I think, was one that he mentioned. I feel like
okay.
he mentioned some other guys, but yeah, he definitely brought up Mo. He was talking about Mo, with the jersey rolled up under his pads. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that tracks. I got you. So, and Stacy weighs in and says Mike Tyler is number 5 now.
He also, but he took Clem in the bar fight, as far as the coaches, but he talked about Mo Brown. But then he talked about basically the whole tight end room, after that point. But there was a great comment. So I posed the question on the Insiders Forum. If you're not on there, by the way, you should come hang out with us. And there were a lot of different responses. I took Trayvon Robertson. You bring who you want. I feel pretty good about T-Rob in my corner. He's huge. He's athletic. He's strong. He's extremely tough. I mean, I'd feel good about a lot of coaches and players on the roster. But the best comment was somebody said, I'm taking Coach Clem. It looks like he has some experience in this category. I was like, that's pretty good.
What does that mean?
I think he's just got that tough look. Like he's got that no nonsense,
Hey, I'm taking Smooth, man. I'm taking Jason Smith. Like I think
Sure.
y'all are
y'all
are sleeping on that pick. But yeah,
Former
Stacy,
first
thank you
rounder.
for that on Tyler. Mike Tyler was 20 last year though, right? After Mike Smith moved to 4,
Departed. Yes.
Mike Tyler took well, no, not when he departed. He
just took Mike
took
switch.
4.
Yeah, the Mike switch. Yeah.
Mike Tyler got 20. Then Mike Smith left and receiver took 4 that transferred out to Miami. Vandravius.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He took 4.
Yeah.
So, man, guys, everybody talks about the portal and NIL and how everything's different. The changing of the numbers might be my old man yells at cloud thing, because I used to be so good at locking in who is who based on their number, and now changes mid-season. But anyway, thank you for pointing that out, Stacy. And I do think back to Mike has a great opportunity to play quite a bit this year. As we're going through the different coaches and what they said, Chris, I don't even want to try to go through everything Trayvon talked about in terms of his experience last year, because I just don't think we can remotely do it justice in a few minutes on this show. Like, he was asked several questions about everything he went through, about his faith, about his mindset, about how he got through it, about, being in the hospital for 2 weeks, basically, about having 6 surgeries, about not being able to lift anything, not being able to walk, not being able to actually come out and, be a part of the team, and then driving by and the guys seeing him for the first time. I can't even do it justice, but I would encourage everybody just to, if you want to see what Trayvon Robertson is all about, go on YouTube and just search for the press conference from this past week. We've got it up. Gamecocks Online has it up, and just listen to the whole thing. You'll get a great feel for what that guy is honestly all about, and just some really impactful things, powerful things there. So we'll leave that to everybody just to go watch themselves. In terms of the players and the things that Trayvon mentioned, Chris, was there anything, because he's got a bunch of new guys in that room, frankly. Is there anything that stood out to you about the guys he talked about?
Man, yeah, he said a lot there. I think yeah, the accident stuff, man, you're exactly right. It's like that was just so, I mean, Beamer talked about it real quick before I get into the players. I just want to mention this. I mean, Beamer reiterated the other day like how serious that was, like even went as far as to say like there are questions about even surviving, so to be out there, I was watching him today. He's out there bouncing around and running, and it's like, man, but Trayvon's just such a tough guy. You remember as a player, he had 2 ACL surgeries. This was obviously a lot more serious than that. He's talking about he can't lift more than 5 pounds, but he starts lifting Gatorade bottles. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. But and he had some really good things to say about Nick Barrett, of course, who's preparing for the NFL draft now. But he the thing that stood out to me is talking about the new guys. So you need leadership in that room, which he talked about. I think that's been a theme this offseason. And they wanted guys with experience and guys who understand, winning and have experience. And they went out there and, I mean, he used the word handpicked. So you go get Jordan Thomas from Georgia. You go get Kelby Collins, who's been at Florida and Alabama. And then you go get Tomey, who's in his 5th year of ball. You've got a lot of experience there. And I remember I was talking to Christian Ingram, redshirt freshman defensive tackle for the Garnet Trust Hour on the radio. And he just said, those guys have come in. And similar to what you said about Caleb Herring at edge, Wes, or what Dion said about him, they've come in, done a really good job of, showing guys the ropes, even though they have a new coach, they have a scheme that they're not used to playing in necessarily. They've been around the block in terms of playing football. And so that stood out. And I also thought that, Trayvon said, look, everybody's going after size and speed and twitch. Like, yes, you have to have those qualities to be good, but he wanted guys with love of the game and leadership, right? So looking for those qualities in guys. And, time will tell, obviously, with the results, but I do think we've heard some nice things early just on how those new transfers are integrating into that room and helping out with everything.
Yeah, and I think, man, the comments he had about the 2 freshmen, with Aiden and Noah, I don't necessarily put a ton of stock into what coaches, generally speaking, say about newcomers that they're like first year, their first 6 practices of their career. There's a long time to go, right? There's a long way to go before you're going to be out there playing. But I did think there were some positive comments about both Aiden and Noah and just the way they have kind of come in and acted like veteran guys, being on time, doing the right things. He's like, man, there's going to be freshman mistakes, and yeah, that's going to happen. They're making those too, but said they're kind of right on pace with where he would want them to be right now. Trayvon, not necessarily a guy who just makes up a reason to be positive about a guy. He's pretty straightforward with this stuff. So I think, he talked about Aiden's twitchiness, said Noah is one of the biggest, fastest guys that South Carolina has signed in some time. And, those are 2 guys I think you would love, if you're Carolina, to kind of let those guys get their feet wet this year and to be talking about them in a year as like really turning them loose and them like being 2 starter type players, I feel like, on the interior of the line. So far so good, I feel like, for those 2 guys. And I think there's an advantage there too, in that you got Jordan Thomas as kind of a little bit of a bridge guy who is not in his final year of eligibility, but is not a true freshman either. And so I think that's something, yeah, maybe he helps you this year. Maybe he helps you a lot this year, but you really are hoping, I think, that he can be a depth guy and then help you maybe quite a bit next year. And you're not having to sit there and say, well, we're having to go out and rebuild the defensive line in the portal once again. And it just becomes a year after year type thing. for one, you're going to miss on guys eventually. For two, it's very expensive. So I think you'd love to kind of be able to get away from that a little bit. All right, before we close it out, man, I do want to get to Coach Clem and some of his comments. Two things stood out to me, man. For one, kind of funny him being asked about, going viral. He said, people told me I was trending or viral, and I had no idea. I didn't even know what it could possibly be about, which I thought summed that up. Like the most bland, gray, just it was a O-line drill, dude. Like the fact this thing went viral with people telling us that they could break down and analyze one drill from one practice is just a microcosm of sports media, Twitter, social media right now, I think. But he also said there's a little story behind that, but that's for another time. I've now made it a mission to try to figure out what that story is because I have no idea what that means, what he's talking about. So, God loves comments says Beamer didn't hesitate to blame Veltri for putting it out there. Perpetuating. There you go. I was about to butcher the name here live. The word live.
I saw that.
Thank you for the assist. Beamer was joking with Jack, guys. That was a joke. But what could that mean? There's a story behind that.
I don't know. I mean, yes, we do need to find that out. My guess is it's probably, because he had the comment where he's like, I kept seeing the same things pop up, or I see the same things popping up in the run game over and over. So maybe it's just as simple as I kept seeing this, and we're coming up with the drill, and here's the drill we came up with, right? I mean, and I think we talked about this before, Wes, when the whole thing blew up initially. There's more than one way to do things well. You have coaches that are more hard-nosed. You have like Rick Pitino, Dan Hurley, that type thing. You have coaches, I guess March Madness was on my mind. You have coaches who are kind of the opposite of that in their demeanor. And you can still be successful. You can have different types of drills. I was telling you today at practice, Elliott was doing a drill where it's like a special teams drill, I think, or maybe it was a positional drill, but there are other guys in there, and they're throwing one of those big exercise balls at guys, and they have to fend it off. And I really wanted to tweet that to see if it'd get 400 million views like Jack's video, just to see if all the Twitter coaches would say that drill was okay to run in practice.
Somebody would have.
100%.
Comic says he doesn't know if Beamer was kidding. Beamer was kidding with Jack.
He was joking. He was joking.
People post videos of these drills at every single open practice. In no way did anybody out there ever think that. I mean, go watch the video. It's a drill. Nobody is posting a video of a drill thinking it's going viral. And then Jack posted the same video the next week just because it was kind of funny.
The exact thing. Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing that stood out to me, dude, this is here nor there, but Nolan Hay has had 7 O-line coaches in his college career. If, we talk about guys bouncing around and coaches bouncing around. I mean, if that is not the most 2026 college football stat, I guess it's not a stat, but info that I've ever heard. 7 O-line coaches in a college career.
Yep. Yeah. And it's not, he has not played college football for 7 years either. Which that's the thing now too. But he has not. He's been around a while, but not 7 years.
Yeah, 2 coaches here.
Yep.
Well, I guess 3 coaches here if we're counting Sean Elliott.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll drive the number up.
That would definitely drive the number up.
Yeah. Yeah.
3 coaches in 2 years. So.
Yeah. Not even. Yeah.
Anything else from Clem?
No, I think I'm good.
You're cashed out on this?
Yeah.
All right, we'll work to get the story on what he was talking about. Maybe, like you said, maybe it's something very small, but I still can't believe that went viral. Anyway, all right, we're gonna get out of here. I think the show is done. He is Chris. I am Wes. Shout out as always to our awesome sponsors, and shout out to you guys for joining us. Come hang out on GamecockCentral.com. Of course, if you are not a subscriber, there's always deals going on right now. Spring sale, new subscribers, 50% off. You don't need a code. You don't need anything else, any promotional thing put in. You just sign up. You'll get 50% off your first year on Gamecock Central. So, all right, like I said, he's Chris. I'm Wes. We're getting out of here. Y'all have a good one, and we will talk to you soon.